everyone, and welcome to Tech Startup Week Atlanta, Friday's edition. I'm here with Ruben Harris, and we're going to be talking to you a little bit about the code less traveled, kind of the non-traditional paths to becoming an engineer or to getting into tech. So I thought the first thing we do is introduce ourselves. Ruben?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for that introduction, Erica. My name is Ruben Harris. Um, I run a company called Career Karma with my co-founders. And for the people that don't know, Career Karma is the easiest way to find a job training program online. So we work with people that are taking non-traditional paths into tech, and we match them with job training programs so they can get high-paying jobs in 3 to 24 months. Career Karma is a product we wish that we had when we were breaking into tech. My brother did a boot camp. My co-founders did boot camps. And I did a boot camp for entrepreneurs. So we're very grateful to be here to see what we can do to help.
Awesome. And I'm Erika Stanley, as I mentioned earlier, and I wear a few different hats. So I work at Mozilla as acting GM for our Hubs product, which is a social 3D platform. And I also am a venture partner at the very new Outlander Labs. I think a few of my partners have also been a part of this week's events. And I also am really active in the Atlanta tech community. I started the Atlanta Network of Women Who Code back in 2013. And we also started a few conference series, one called We Rise Tech and one called Refactor Tech, really with the goal of getting people who are marginalized and underrepresented, really showcasing the amazing things they're doing in tech. Awesome. So you kind of hinted at this, Ruben, but how did you get into tech?
Um, it's a good question. When I was in school, everybody wanted to go to investment banking. Um, and I didn't know anybody that was an investment banker. So I used to read a lot of blogs. This was before Medium was around. I used to read a lot of Blogger. Um, and through reading blogs, I discovered a website called Mergers and Inquisitions, and breaking into Wall Street. So I took a course to become an investment banker. And through that process, that's how I met my first co-founder. And my first co-founder is a twin brother. His name's Archer Meister. And we were all in Atlanta. And the other one's Timor Meister. And none of us knew how to code. So long story short, one day in the bank, one of our buddies quit his job and became an engineer 3 months later. And we're like, how did you do that? And he actually went to Flatiron School, which is a boot camp in New York. And he was in the same cohort as another investment banker named Jack Altman, who was a brother of Sam Altman from Y Combinator, and now the CEO of Lattice. And that's how we discovered boot camps. And that's also how we found out about Y Combinator. This was when we were in Atlanta, right across the street from the startup Chai Down, or from the Atlanta Tech Village. They would have the Chai Downs every week. And so we would meet people that were doing these different ways that weren't college. I was considering doing my MBA. And then through just meeting people and hearing these stories, I decided not to do my MBA and buy a one-way ticket to Silicon Valley and figure it out.
Awesome. Kind of thinking back, I've been in tech for a long time. I'm showing my age, but I have always had interest in tech from really young. And so I started coding really early, and eventually decided to go to school for computer science. I went to Clark Atlanta, where I studied computer science and also got my master's, and really was involved in kind of 3D interactive work there, because the reason I got into tech was kind of to mix my love of art with my love of tech, and see if I could make that a career, which all came from gaming at a really early age. I blame my dad and my brother. So kind of took that all the way through college, and into my master's, and did some post-grad research at UNC as well, all in the areas of 3D interactive graphics and mixed reality and telepresence. So you can kind of tell from both of our stories, you kind of discovering, boot camps and different ways to get into tech from friends, right? Like not even from a school or from some kind of institution. And then me, being at a HBCU, and kind of building my technical career in Atlanta, which at the time was not the tech hub that it is today. And did not get the play that you might see from some of the Bay Area companies or New York or some of those other places. So you can kind of start to see that there's this non-traditional path. You don't have to be, for instance, a graduate of Stanford. You don't have to go to MIT and go to some big startup in the Bay. There are ways that you can build your tech career outside of that. So what are some other common misconceptions we found as we work to bring more people into tech?
Yeah. I'll go into it in a second, real quick. What game did you play when you
Oh,
were
I
playing?
played everything. And I don't get the game as much as I like these days, but mostly I do combat games.
Awesome. Yeah. No. Growing up in Atlanta as well, I was a big gamer. I played Counter Strike during the
Um,
1.5 days. I actually had a LAN team in Atlanta, which also kind of introduced me to the tech world because a lot of these other gamers were programmers. And eventually we met in real life, which low key like kind of introduced me into the tech world because we used IRC chat before Slack was a thing.
yeah,
And so to your point, I think media has created this image of a hacker or someone in tech as like someone that's super nerdy that um, is like abnormally intelligent, and there's only a few people in the world that can do this. But the fact of the matter is that code is a language, right? And it's instructions that you give to a computer for you to get it to do what you want. And anybody can learn a language, no matter how difficult it is. Like people move from different countries to the United States every day to learn a new language. And the fastest way to learn a new language is to move to that country and surround yourself by other people that are speaking the language. And then eventually you will be forced to learn it. And you will do it because you got to survive. The human beings are amazing. Every single one of us is amazing. And a lot of times, if you pay attention to society or what other people say, you forget about what your true power is.
yeah,
Right? We are all natural at things that are not natural to everybody else. And it's super important for you to figure out not how to become an engineer or a designer or a data scientist or a salesperson, but to take your life experience, not just work experience, your life experience, and to use skill sets to enhance what you've already done to achieve your purpose. And if you learn how to take your perceived disadvantages and turn them into advantages, um, you win, because skills and degrees don't get you jobs, and neither does learning how to code. If we all have the same level of experience and the same skill set, the reason why someone's going to hire you over me is because of who you are. And if you don't believe in yourself, it's going to be very difficult to get anybody else to believe in you. So we help people realize that they're dope and they're the ones that have the power.
I agree with so much of that. It's really about owning your story, right? Owning your own narrative. And something I saw so much, especially in the early days of Women Who Code, were these women who were career changers. And they thought that they were bringing nothing to the table when it came to tech. And it's like, you've been in your career for 10 years. You've been a manager. You've been an executive. You've dealt with all kinds of problems. And you raised some really good points because you mentioned it's about languages. And those are things that humans have been learning for, centuries, millennia. And so the other part of that is problem solving. And if you've been in any career with people, right, and had to deal with people, you have been problem solving. So bring those same skills that we master all of the time to what you're doing in tech. I'd say another misconception, though, kind of it runs a little bit counter to what we were just talking about, but I think it's important to say that this is not super easy, right? I think a lot of people get involved early on, and they find that it's kind of tough when you're learning. You might be working a job at the same time. You might be doing other things, and you're trying to focus on learning to code or learning some new technology. And if you don't get it right away, and you hear people saying like, oh, well, if you're not getting it, maybe it's just not for you. This does take some time. It does take a little bit of investment on your part. And if you don't get it right away, it doesn't mean that it's not for you. It just means that you might need to dive in a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I think like to touch on that, right? So I'm a cellist. I've been playing the cello since I was 4 years old.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the way that I started was through a concept called the Suzuki method by Dr. Shinichi Suzuki. And it's a different school of thought than like the traditional like Russian school of thought. Like
Mm.
like a traditional thought is there's only elite students that are prodigies and you train them and like it's for them and like they're gonna get to where they want to go. Dr. Suzuki's philosophy is all children speak Japanese, which is a difficult language. So how are these kids learning how to do this? And every child can is the concept. So if you want to do it, you can do it. So when you sign up for lessons, you are not allowed to sign up unless you stick with it for at least a year. And so at least for me. And so to your point, you don't have to be. Can you still hear me?
I can.
Yeah, you don't have to be. You don't have to be the hare. You could be the tortoise, and the tortoise won the race. Like it takes time for you to understand what your learning style is and what the school's teaching style is. And the to your point, learning how to code isn't easy, but nothing worth doing is easy, right? Learning an instrument is hard. Um, Running and getting a six pack is hard. Being good at jujitsu and getting a black belt is hard, right? But it comes down to your decision to do it and stick with it and see it all the way through.
Absolutely. I think there's that misconception that you have to be naturally gifted at this and kind of chosen, right, to do this. And just wanted to dispel that and demystify that a little bit. But you mentioned something about kind of understanding your learning style. I want to dive into that a little bit more because I think that that's also a way that people, it's kind of a misconception that everybody's going to learn the same way and every boot camp, every program is going to work for every kind of person. So dive into that a little bit for me.
Yeah. So this is why nobody can create a monopoly in education, right? You can't create a school that trains the entire world, right? Because humans are different. One size fits all classrooms don't work. I also went to Montessori school growing up, which is um there's a lot of things with Montessori, but it's mixed age classrooms, um, small student teacher ratios that teach you about individuality while also being aware of your community and understanding like where your strengths are and the way that you learn and like kind of like teaching you in your own way. To your point, some people are visual learners, some people are audio learners, some people require touch in order to fully understand concepts. And some people are naturally gifted at something. Some people take a little more time than others. But that's why working at companies is great because um, building companies is a team sport, right? And when you think about learning styles and teaching styles and education, our society is big on standardized testing and GPAs and perfection and straight A's. But the way life works, at least in the tech world, is if you're optimizing for perfection, then you're moving too slow. It's not about taking the shot and making it hitting the bullseye immediately. It's about taking the shot as soon as possible, completely missing, and then understanding how far off you are. Right? It's very similar to like if you aren't embarrassed at the first version of the product you've launched late, and you actually see it a lot in engineering interviews. Some of the people that I see that have gotten the best salaries in the world are um, people that asked the right questions, maybe got the wrong answer during the interview when they were asked the hard question, but because of their thought process and their ability to work with others and the way that they communicated and their coachability, they got hired. And often for a language that they didn't even know, right? So a good example is the first person we placed in Career Karma. His name is Jarek Warren. He went to a boot camp focused on iOS development, and when he got to the interview, he got hired. He went through some of the things that I told you. He got hired in a language that he didn't know, which was React. And his first job was $145,000, and he knew nothing about code. He's a black man, single father, and it was amazing. And so just I know that's kind of digressing from learning style and teaching style, but I think that like not just understanding what your individual learning style is and what the teaching style is, but also understanding how you work with others. You know, I think when you think about teaching style, we talked a little bit about learning style. Teaching style matters because chemistry matters, right? It's it's hard to relate with everybody, especially if you haven't been through what they've been through. But if you're able to match up the right mentor with the right person, it's good. So like you mentioned women who code, right? Like or right, women who code in Atlanta.
Yeah,
So if I'm a woman, like it's hard for me to relate to women because I'm not a woman. But if I'm another woman, then like I'm closer to being able to relate to you and resonate with you and explain concepts to you. Let's say we're both women, but you're a mom and I'm not. It's harder for me to relate to the issues that moms or the challenges that that mothers face. And so shared struggle matters, I think. And that's why a lot of times, like going to in my school, my business school experience, I loved it. But part of the reason why I moved to Silicon Valley is because none of my business professors had the experience building billion-dollar companies. And so Y Combinator surrounds you by thousands of people that have either invested, built, or supported billion-dollar companies. And you want to think about the average of the five people that you're around. And so the last thing that I'll say about this is there's learning style, there's teaching style, and also who you're studying with, because that peer motivation, that peer support is probably one of the most valuable things about your career navigation journey.
absolutely. And I think you can kind of tie that directly to some of the programs out there that might be best for you. If you're, thinking about learning to code, or learning to get into tech, or learning to get into data science, or any of the technical fields, right? Because it's more than just becoming an engineer. But does that mean that you would do better in a really personalized program? Does it mean that you would do something better in something like a MOOC, or something like Coursera, or something where you can be a little bit more self-guided? How much do you need other people around you to kind of hold you accountable? How much guiding, directing do you need? And kind of taking that, what's the structure? What's the format of the boot camp, of the program that you're going to be interested in? Is it, to your point, is it more visual? Is this something that's more project based? So it's a little bit more hands on. So what are the ways that you have found that you learn really well, and apply that to the program that is going to be the best for you?
Yeah, so most people don't finish where they start, right? If you look at the stats for MOOCs like Coursera and all these other things, there's like over 100 million people that have signed up, but
Mm-hmm.
only like a 5 to 15% completion rate, you know? And part of that is you can give people all the resources in the world, all the best trainers in the world, and they won't finish the program. Like, if I gave, like, you could give most people a free gym membership, a personal trainer, and a workout plan, and the best diet, chefs, everything. And I would argue most people, if they were self-directed, they wouldn't do it 5 days a week for 52 weeks, you know? And so having peers that are pushing you to, like, for example, I'll give you this an example. This morning, I went to sleep very late last night. I went to sleep at 4 a.m. and my cousin called me at 7:30 a.m. and he said, "Are you ready to run?" Because I told him I wanted to run at 7 a.m. and apparently he called me at 7 and I missed the call. Did I feel like going? No. But did I know if I was going to go outside that I was going to be able to do the run when I felt the cold? Yes. And I ended up doing 4 miles. And it was great. And I feel awesome now, and I'm alive and I'm awake and I got the adrenaline rush. And so what boot camps do is they don't just give you the curriculum, which you can find anywhere. They give you the peer support. They give you the trainer. They teach you how to build the projects. They teach you how to go through the interviews. They surround you by something that keeps you on track. It's like being in a real boot camp, right? How do you think that the military trains a Navy SEAL or a Marine or all these other people? Like they do it in a different way, right? They use the big stick, right? You could do it by being hardcore, or you can do it with love, or a mixture of both, right? Sometimes you need people to tell you what to do, right? And so, um, on top of that, you got to understand how to do things like pair programming. Like you can try to be self-directed all you want, but if you don't know how to work with other people, you're gonna not do well. And I saw a stat from TripleByte that 50% of engineering interviews fail for non-technical reasons. So, like, if you don't know how to tell your story, if you don't know how to ask the right question, if you don't know how to work with others, it's not going to work. And so I think that's, I'll say, oh yeah, this is another thing, like boot camps versus like college. Like, I think, I like to think about the tech world very similar to the music world. Think about it like this. Most of the famous artists that you hear on the radio never went to Juilliard, right? They just know how to make songs that people like, right? And after they start getting some type of success, they understand the importance of developing themselves, and then they'll maybe hire a vocal coach or somebody that can teach them the music theory, like a Pharrell, for example, or Quincy Jones or whatever. Quincy Jones did it the other way. But anyway, but there's like, but if you think about it with tech or like the way our society is, a lot of the stuff that we learn in college is focused on theoretical things. And then when you get to the company, you don't know anything and you still need more training. And so boot camps take the opposite approach, and they teach you how to do things that are exactly what companies need. And then when you'll get the theory by working on real things on the job versus working on case studies about them.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. There are a lot of different ways that you can learn. First of all, build up your portfolio, but also learn to work with others. Learn to work with others in a team. And so, a few things I would highlight. Hackathons are great for this. Great for understanding like how the work you do fits into the larger, like building a product, possibly building a company. Um, and something that we try to stress at any of the hackathons that we've held as part of Women Who Code Atlanta is to make sure that people understand you don't have to be a developer to contribute to a team, to a technical team. We need everyone from product owners to people who can design to people who can be the advocate for the product, right? Like we need everybody in the room. So that's one. Open source is another great way. You're learning a lot. A lot of people I know have found their mentors not in the same area, right? Like not even in the same city or state that they are working in, but people who they can ask questions because they started through open source. And then the other way, and this is for anybody who's going either the boot camp way or the college way or some way in between, try to find something like an internship or an apprenticeship. Because to your point, Ruben, I went the college route, and if I had only done the college route, I would not have been prepared for what the industry needed exactly when I graduated. But fortunately, I did lots of internships and got a lot of like practical experience to be able to apply some of that theory, and that's what's necessary. And really understanding how to problem solve with people is the skill set, is what you're going to be doing day to day.
Yeah, I really like that you brought up the open source community, because if you are taking the self-taught route, or even if you are taking the bootcamp route, it really teaches you how to work with other people. It is majority white and male dominated,
Absolutely.
but if we get more people into that space, I think a lot of awesome things can happen. Like I know Mozilla is really big on open source, and I've actually thought about like, you know, what could an open source curriculum look like for people that
Yeah.
are coming out of like career karma, that like, so they can get more experience. Because a lot of times people, they leave a boot camp, and because it's such a whirlwind, they still feel like they want to have a little bit more experience or get more ready for some of the technical challenges. And I think open source curriculum is a really good way to like get that like in between job search and employment. Because portfolios are more important than resumes. So it gives you a little bit more time to like really build a project that's true to you and what you lived through, that you can tell a story about and get employed at a company that's closer to your purpose.
Offline, we should talk about that open source
Let's do
curriculum.
it.
Sounds
Let's
really
do it.
cool. But kind of like rounding this out, we've mentioned it a few times, but how do you get jobs after this, right? That's the real goal. And I think that's been, an area where people have a lot of frustration around coming out of a boot camp, coming out of kind of a self-taught, community-taught kind of mindset. Now I'm looking for a job and I need to figure out how to market myself.
Yeah, I have two videos on our YouTube channel. One is called "How to Get a Job with No Experience," and the other one is called "Why Bootcamp Grads Don't Get Jobs." And this is a problem not just for bootcamp grads or self-taught people. It's a problem for college. Like 43% of college grads are underemployed within their first year. And the way to think about why that's the case is because the job search is a sales process. The job search is a sales process. And most people don't understand how sales works. And the way sales works, it's a very deep subject, but high level, 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of your efforts, right? So if I apply to 5 companies, maybe one will respond. That doesn't mean they'll give you an interview. But like, so it's a numbers game, right? So you need to understand how the math works, and you got to understand the importance of momentum and leads and prospects and how to follow up and stay on top of things. And so in a good environment or not, I don't care if you went to Stanford or Harvard or Flatiron or Thinkful or the self-taught route, I would argue you should target a minimum of applying to 50 to 100 companies a month. And if you're not used to rejection, it doesn't feel good to be told no. It doesn't feel good to fail at a technical challenge. And so going back to that concept that I told you about just taking the shot and missing, let's say you get straight out of a boot camp or you just finished your self-taught course or you just finished college, get an interview as soon as possible. It can be at a company you don't want to work for. I preferably it's a company that's like at the bottom of your list. And you're probably going to fail the coding challenge. That's okay. What I would encourage you to do is if you do fail it, complete it anyway and still send it. Because what's going to happen is you're going to understand where your weaknesses are. And rather than working on fake projects and data structures and algorithms and all these other things to get ready for an interview, the best practice that you can get is from actually doing real coding challenges from companies to get better. All right. Also, a lot of people focus on applying on the website. And that's going to be a black hole for most people. Most jobs are offline and come through referral. Right? And nobody cares. Like the school you went to, your GPA, like your historical performance, like it matters kind of. But what matters is like what can you do now? Right? And what story can you tell? What value can you bring to this organization? So something that people undervalue is the importance of people picking companies, because essentially you're investing in companies with your time. You're like a VC with your time, right? For the people that don't know what VC is venture capital, right? They give money to companies, entrepreneurs to start companies. But what you're doing for companies is you're giving them your time to help them get to where they want to go, which I would argue time is more valuable than money. And so the way you choose matters. And so when you create your list of companies, try to make it aligned with who you are and what your background is, right? So if I'm from Atlanta and I'm really big in the music industry, I are currently, like, let's say I was a sound engineer and I decided to become a designer, like, or I decided to be a software engineer instead, I would apply to companies like Spotify and SoundCloud and all these other things, Amazon Music, whatever. Because now you're not a junior developer, you are a seasoned music executive that happens to know how to code, right? So you want to build projects that are relevant to who you are. And the other thing that I would say is making sure that you are working with other people that are also going through the job search, because they're going to be giving you alley oops. Like if you're applying on the website every day, or just sending, if sending, like, let's say you feel like you're doing good because you're applying to like 5 companies a day. I would argue, I would encourage. I think 5 companies a day is like, it's a good start, but I would encourage you to go to 5 to 20 a day. And when I say apply to companies, I actually mean reach out to 5 to 20 people within the company with a code or a warm email, because that's going to lead to a much greater outcome than on the website every time.
I agree with that. And I think something that a lot of people don't understand, that a lot of this is about networking. And you
Mm-hmm.
really networking long before you're actually looking for the job. So people should know, the people around you, your network should know that this is something that you are embarking on, that this is something that is important to you well before you're graduating, right? They can actually be working for you, to help you understand that what kind of companies would be great for the skill set that you're building up. What kind of, manager would you like? They might be able to kind of pinpoint, like, this would be a great person to help you grow. And I think a lot of people go through the boot camp, they do all the work, they get to the end, and then they start looking for a job. So something else I would say is, like, whatever your preparation is, whether it's networking, whether it's mock interviews, whether it's doing, working with other people in your boot camp, in your network, whatever it is, start well before you're actually going to be looking for the job. So
Well,
just
well,
that up.
related to this is a very famous quote for entrepreneurs where they say, if you want advice, ask for money, but if you want money, ask for advice. And similarly, similarly to your point, before you even get to the job search, even when you're exploring boot camps, you can literally create your list of dream companies and identify people that look like you, that talk like you, that have been through what you've been through early, and reach out to them for advice, like like in the beginning of your journey. Ask them about their story. They're going to tell you what they feel. And then what's beautiful about that is you've talked to them when you don't need anything and they've told you to do something. Then 5 months later, you come back and be like, hey, remember me? You told me to do this. I did that. And now I'm here. And they want to help you because they see themselves in you, right? I see somebody in the chat. He said he's 52, right? There's a ton of other 52 years olds that have done this as well, like that have also started companies and like it didn't work out, that also had their MBAs. Like, reach out to them early. They'll tell you their story. They'll tell you what they did, and then when you get to the job search, it's gonna be butter. And the fact is there's 50,000 people turning 65 every day for the next 19 years. Like, people are living longer. It's not a big deal. Like, there's a lot of people that are doing the things out here. And so I really like that point that you brought up. It's a valuable one.
Awesome. So we're going to start wrapping up, but I do want to ask one more question because I think this is really important. What are some other considerations that people should make as they're charting their career in tech? Thinking of things like how COVID has accelerated or changed the industry, thinking about parenting and kind of preparing for a career in tech, as a parent.
People that are preparing for a career in tech as a parent. Um, it's a good question. I would say the first thing that you want to do is audit your time and understand like where your time is going. A lot of times people will say, hey, I don't have enough hours in the day, but you don't know how to manage your day if you don't know where your time is going. So before creating a routine, just like track what you do daily and then see where that is. Because then once you can visualize what you do, just put it in Google Calendar, like in blocks. Like, this morning I got up at this time. This time I dropped the kids off. This time I went to work. This time I spent time with my husband or wife, or whatever. And this time I did whatever. Like, this was my TV time, whatever. Then you'll see where you have blocks to put in 15, 20, 30 minutes, an hour to do what you got to do. But you got to be ruthless about time management. If you have a partner that you're co-parenting with, I would also encourage you to try to get them to be supportive about the journey, to fill in the slack and be understanding that there's an opportunity cost. There might be less quality time. There might be you needing to hold down the fort while I'm studying, because if you let me do this, then we'll it will both be better off, like holding down the family. And you hear that a lot on our podcast. We have a podcast called Breaking into Startups, and there's plenty of stories where you know that happened, where they had a supportive spouse. But that's actually not always the case. Sometimes you actually have a lot of people that are their intentions are good because they love you. So it'll be like Pursuit of Happiness. You've seen the Pursuit of Happiness movie when he wants to be a stockbroker, and she was like, "What? You don't want to be an astronaut?" She's kind of like mocking him, right? It's like sometimes people think you being a coder is impossible, right? But like you gotta tune that out. So I'll say that's important. Um, the other thing that I would say is make sure you take time to balance, because dealing with school, your partner, and um, kids is a lot, and people underestimate the importance of recovery. And I know I just told you I only slept for like 3.5 hours last night, so I'm not the best example of it, but I'm not a parent yet. And so, well, and so I think that like making sure that you rest matters. What I do is I am religious, so sundown Friday to sundown Saturday, I keep the Sabbath, so I give myself 24 hours, and that actually um, gives me time to recover. So I'll say make sure that you give yourself time to recover and not do anything, so that you can come with a fresh perspective. Um, there are other programs as well that will give you like living stipends. So explore living stipends. And there's a lot of scholarships that exist for parents. Um, and the last thing that I'll say about this point is surround yourself by other parents that are doing this, because, like I said, I'm not a parent, but through connecting with other parents, they will actually give you their tips for their specific programs that they've chosen that are aligned with the ones that you're curious about exploring, and they'll give you their routines that they've created that you can use as a baseline to create your own. And I actually think that goes back to the original point about peer mentorship. I think that's one of the most valuable things. And the Moms Who Code and the Dads Who Code squads and Career Karma are the biggest ones.
Awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for that. I think that's going to be extremely useful for people. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll now move this conversation to our social media channels. Feel free to ask me or Ruben any questions you have. And again, thank you for being here.
Peace. Thank you.